Good morning. Thank you all for coming. My name is Mike Hestron. I'm the Riverside County District Attorney. Today we want to talk about several things. The first thing on our agenda is to talk to you about a case that was filed in court today against individual named Joseph Michael Costanza. Mr. Costanza was charged with second-degree murder for essentially sale of fentanyl to someone who then subsequently died. I want to talk to you a little bit about that investigation and prosecution and kind of what went into that. It's a case, we've never filed a case like that in Riverside County. There have been some across California, but it's a first for us here in Riverside County. We want to talk to you generally. Oh, our signal died. Sorry. It probably worked perfectly before we started. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and keep going. So the next thing we're gonna talk about as well is just the dangers we're facing here in Riverside County from fentanyl. It's a danger that is increasing, and the sheriff is gonna be briefing you all on what we're facing specifically in this county. And then I want to talk about two things, kind of what we're going to do about it. We have a new partnership and a project going forward with some of our federal partners, both law enforcement and our prosecution partners on the federal side. I also want to talk about needed changes in state law. Let me introduce the people that are up here with me. We've got my Assistant United States Attorney Jerry Yang is here from the U.S. Attorney's Office in Riverside. And of course, we have Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco. So at this point, what I want to do is focusing on the murder case against Mr. Costanza. I'm going to ask Sheriff Bianco to come up and brief you all about the investigation that led to today's filing, and then I'll come back up and tell you a little bit more about the charges that were filed.
Good morning, everyone. I will give brief and basic information. Obviously, because we are now prosecuting this case and moving forward with it, I can't give all of the details, or I won't give all of the details. But I want just briefly to talk about how we're here and how we got here. Obviously, the sales of fentanyl led to a death, and our investigation began that investigation into the death and subsequently led to this and the filings for this. So first off, I want to, my heartfelt condolences go to the family of all of the victims of these fentanyl deaths. I want to tell you that this is not, or this is a very, very substantial all of these deaths are the increasing numbers of deaths in Riverside County are mimicking what we are seeing across the rest of the country. I see in the audience Mr. and Mrs. Capilouto. I want to thank you for coming. Our investigation into these types of deaths really started in the very end of 2019. I want to tell you a little bit about fentanyl. Fentanyl, for those of you that do not know, is a synthetic opiate that is anywhere from 80 to 100 times more potent than morphine. Very, very small amounts of fentanyl will lead to a death. I want to tell you what we're experiencing in Riverside County. Back in 2016, there were 2 deaths in Riverside County that were related to fentanyl. 2018, there were 55. 2 years ago, there were 55 deaths. Last year, we had 227 deaths that were related to fentanyl. Now, there's DA Hestron's going to talk about what we're hoping to accomplish in the future, but right now, this is a very, very difficult investigation to handle, to show that not only the person sold the fentanyl pills, but also that it was the selling of that pill was related to the death. This particular case that we're talking about today began in November of last year. There was a very large investigation by our Special Investigations Bureau into not only the suspect, but the suspect's family. We have found that there were 7 overdoses at that house, at the suspect's house, over a year time period, and 2 actual deaths. Those cases are still being investigated by us, but obviously it brought us to this one today that we do have, we feel that we have enough for the prosecution of the case. We submitted it to the district attorney's office. One thing that he mentioned is the cooperation between different agencies and our federal partners. I want to tell you that Riverside County, I'm speaking on behalf of all of the chiefs of police of Riverside County. We are working very closely together on specialized teams that are trying to combat the problem that we're having with fentanyl. We are making it a goal of every death caused by fentanyl toxicity is being investigated as a potential homicide, and all of us are working together to make sure that the victims' families, justice is done for them and the victims themselves. So as we go on, I don't want to get into too much of the case unless DA Hestron wants to later, but I will say that this is a very substantial investigation by us and by our federal partners, and we're very, very confident that we're doing the right thing here and we're going to come out with a little bit of justice for the family.
So let me talk about the filing today. As I mentioned, today we filed a host of charges, drug trafficking charges, but primarily the one that is, I think, most important is that we filed murder charges for this particular individual, Mr. Costanza. And I want to explain to you how difficult it is to file murder charges and why the investigation that went into building the case was so critical. In California, in order to file murder charges on a case like this, we have to show that the suspect, the defendant, had specific, not general, knowledge of the dangers of selling fentanyl, that it could result in someone's death, and that having that in mind, he chose to disregard that and sell fentanyl anyway, endangering people, putting their lives at risk. And so in order to show that, we have to show, again, it has to be specific knowledge. So in this case, the investigators did a fantastic job of going back and documenting that knowledge, all the ways that we can prove knowledge, and I'm not going to get into the specific evidence, but that's the challenge that we face. And the best analogy I can give you is many years ago, DUIs, people, getting behind the wheel and driving while they're impaired, it was the same challenge when somebody was killed on our freeways or our roads to prosecute someone for murder. And eventually we began to do so. And we began to do so because when someone gets a DUI now, they have to sign an admonishment that they understand that it's dangerous to drink and drive, to drive impaired, and that people die as a result of that. And that's where we're headed now with fentanyl. There is no safe way to sell or use fentanyl. Fentanyl is lethal to human beings. It's lethal to the human body in very small amounts. I just want to give you a sense of how lethal fentanyl is. 2 milligrams of fentanyl is a lethal dose for most people. In a teaspoon, there are 5,000 milligrams of fentanyl. In the last 2 weeks, task forces in Riverside County, and specifically the Gang Impact Team, which is led by this office, by the Bureau of Investigation, but also in partnership with the Sheriff's Department, pulled 3 kilos of fentanyl, raw fentanyl, off the streets of this county. This is a growing, gathering threat. It's a menace. People are dying in incredible numbers. And so the sheriff mentioned that we had 227 deaths last year. That number is going to continue to increase unless we do something about it. And today's press conference is to tell you what exactly we're doing about it. We're not going to stand by. Nobody up here on this stage is going to stand by and do nothing. We're going to do everything we can to protect the people of this county. It's a serious threat, and law enforcement has to act, and the DA's office is going to act. And so today's case, we were able to get the evidence to file murder charges on this individual. I believe it's warranted. I believe the evidence will show that it's deserved, and I believe that a jury will convict this individual of murder. but in the vast majority of cases, it's much more difficult. And we have to find a way to let the public know of the dangers that we're facing. So one of the things that we need to do and that we're going to do in Riverside County is we are going to partner with our federal prosecutors, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and also the DEA, FBI, a host of other federal agencies. And we've formed a new partnership to tackle this problem head on. So because of that, I wanted to invite up Jerry Yang to explain to you kind of what's happening on the federal level. Jerry?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jerry Yang, and I'm an assistant U.S. attorney, and I'm in charge of our Riverside branch office over here. I want to first thank District Attorney Mike Hestrin for inviting me today to speak and for addressing one of the most difficult narcotics problems facing the community today. Heroin, oxycodone, and now fentanyl have brought the full force of the opioid crisis to Southern California. Overdose deaths has spiked in recent years as the sheer amount of fentanyl has skyrocketed. Fentanyl has become the primary driver of the ongoing opioid crisis across the nation, with this drug now being involved in more overdose deaths than any other illicit drug. The United States Attorney's Office, working with federal agencies like the DEA, as well as our local law enforcement partners, has had a long history of developing strategies to confront emerging drug threats. About 3 years ago, we partnered with the DEA to establish a program to deal with the increasing number of deaths caused by fentanyl overdoses. We have now been reviewing many of the overdose deaths in Los Angeles County to determine if we can identify the source of the drug that caused the overdose. And now we've charged about a dozen cases of drug dealers suspected of distributing narcotics resulting in death. Most of these cases involve fentanyl. These cases send an important message to drug dealers who face a mandatory minimum sentence of 20 years in prison if one of their customers dies of an overdose. We are now expanding our efforts in the Inland Empire, and we look forward to working with the District Attorney's Office to deal with the fentanyl problem, which has cut far too many lives short. As part of our collaboration, the District Attorney has graciously agreed to cross-designate one of his prosecutors to serve as a Special Assistant United States Attorney. This prosecutor is going to work with federal agencies, and one of his primary focuses will be on cases stemming from fentanyl trafficking. The United States Attorney is extremely grateful for this assistance, and I look forward to working with this prosecutor as we focus our efforts to slow the spread of fentanyl and save lives.
Thank you, Jerry. Finally, before I take questions, and all three of us are be open to any questions you may have, the last thing I want to mention is changes that we need of state laws at the state level that will make our job not easier. We're not looking for easier, but to give us the tools we need to protect the public. As I mentioned, the best analogy is DUI for the laws that we need. Senator Melissa Melendez has introduced a Senate bill, SB 350, which would help us in making sure that people who are convicted of trafficking in fentanyl would have that admonishment and have that documented, that they understand the risks. What we're facing here is a life and death situation for too many of our residents in Riverside County. And so this is the beginning, not the end. We're going to come together, and we're going to, I know that our sheriff is 100% committed to this. Our U.S. Attorney's Office is committed to this. And we're going to come together, and we're going to do everything we can to protect people in this county and make sure we get the word out about the dangers of fentanyl. And part of that is prosecuting people who commit this crime and kill people, because that's what they're doing. They're killing people. And we're not just going to sit back and watch it happen. It's unfolding across our county, and we're going to do something about it. And for those people out there that sell fentanyl, today marks the day that you need to understand what you're doing. Find something else to do. Find another way to make money. You can't do this anymore. People are dying. Simple as that. And with that, I'll take questions. Any questions at all?
Excuse me, who makes the fentanyl?
Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid. Much of it, I don't know, I probably could get, the DEA probably is a better expert on that, but my understanding is much of it is made in China. And one of the things, and I forgot to comment, but one of the things that makes fentanyl so deadly is that unlike tar heroin, or say from 25 years ago, fentanyl is a powder and it's mixed up and put into pills. And so the traffickers and the dealers are actually buying pill-making machines, and they're making pills that mimic and sort of look like not over-the-counter, prescription opioids. And so far too many people are taking these pills thinking that it's okay, it's a prescription. You know, maybe someone got it from someone's medicine cabinet, when that's the farthest thing from reality. This is a street drug, and it's being mixed in bathtubs and other kinds of containers, and it's not safe. So let's put it this way, and the sheriff and I were talking, and I'm glad that you want to expand on that. We think that in pretty much every batch of fentanyl, there are lethal doses of fentanyl. I'm going to have the sheriff come up and expand a little bit.
Just a little bit on that. It's predominantly made in China, and it's being smuggled across the border from Mexico into the U.S. What I want to really emphasize here is when we're talking about fentanyl overdoses, but no one's taking fentanyl. They're taking oxycodones, they're taking Valiums, they're taking things, Percocet, that they believe that they're taking something else, they're purchasing something else, when in reality, that is a complete fake pill that is made up of filler and fentanyl. Not only that, because of the potency of this drug, we are finding in law enforcement that it is being mixed with the rest of the illicit street drugs, not only the heroines to make it more potent and less price for the dealer and for the manufacturer, but also into the amphetamines, the methamphetamine, to give it a little bit extra kick, to give it a different high. And the problem with all of that is you don't know exactly how much fentanyl you're taking, if you even believe that you're taking fentanyl at all. So if you're buying a pill from someone off the street, your friend, and you think you're buying Percocet, Valium, anything, Vicodin, anything, you don't know what you're getting unless it's coming from a doctor, from a doctor's prescription, in a pill bottle with your name on it. If it's coming from anyone else, the chances of you taking fentanyl are extremely high. The chances of you overdosing are even exponentially higher than that. There's no control over how much fentanyl is in that pill, and what we're seeing is not only in the prescription drugs when you think you're buying that, but also the methamphetamines, the cocaines, the heroines, those are also causing fentanyl deaths because the drug dealers and the sellers are mixing it to maximize profits.
Any questions for the sheriff?
One more question. Is this an issue all across the county, or more particularly in certain areas, Coachella Valley? Where do we stand? How does this relate?
It's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's in our jails. It's in every region. This is exploding across the country, and our county is no exception. And so there's not a single community that's immune from this. Other questions?
How different is it than meth?
Completely different. This is an opioid, a synthetic opioid. Meth is devastating, but it's a whole different set of problems. And as the sheriff was explaining, this fentanyl is the reason why it's spreading is because the traffickers and the dealers can make more money. It's cheaper, and so it's going to continue to spread, and it's fatal. It's deadly, and there's no way to make it safe, other than under a doctor's care. But getting a pill from the street is not safe, and we're going to continue to have these deaths, these fentanyl poisoning deaths, as we go forward.
What
Yes?
do people look for when they're taking fentanyl? What do they, or whatever they're taking?
The problem with fentanyl is if you took too much fentanyl, it's too late, you're dead. The last week in one of our jails, we had 5 overdoses related to fentanyl. We revived all of them. One of them just died. The most recent died. So our entire sheriff's department, we have had to issue Narcan to every single one of our deputies. And I can't tell you, we had 221 deaths last year. It's probably in the thousands of Narcan that was administered by either deputies or by AMR or by our hospital staff when we got them that far, or even our fire department. The deaths would be in the thousands were we not able to revive them just by giving them Narcan. But you're not going to know you're overdosing. If you took too much of that pill, that's it, it's too late.
Any other questions?
What programs do you guys have to help out the family and the victims of people trying to get off the opioids? Do you have any programs that can help anybody out with that?
We sure do. We sure do. We have a Family Justice Center. We have a Division of Victim Services, and there are numerous programs to help addicts, not just in our office, but through the courts, through social services. So we can give you all kinds of referrals. Those programs are difficult for people who are addicted to opioids. It's a difficult road for an addict. But let's be real clear. This prosecution today is not about people who are addicted. This is about people who are maliciously spreading this poison. That's what it's about today. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much.